Good. We'll dive straight into it. So we'll start with our formal interview questions right away. And just to kind of have a little bit of an introduction so the young people can get to know you a little bit better, could you please tell us about your career journey and then what it is you do now?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to start at the end, actually, and talk a little bit about what I do now and tell you all how I got here, because it's a slightly odd journey. So I'm Simon Mellor. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive at Arts Council England, and Arts Council England is the national development agency for creativity and culture. We get money both from the government and the National Lottery to help invest in museums and art centres and theatres and concert halls and libraries and art galleries. So all of those things in your community that are connected to arts and culture will be things that we will often be involved in funding and putting money into. So that's, and I'm a senior member of the Arts Council, and I'm involved in helping to set the strategy and think about how we invest our money to get the maximum benefit for all of our communities. So I've been at the Arts Council now for about 11 years, and but my journey here is you know, I worked directly in the arts for a long time. When I was at school, all my friends seemed to be people who were artistic. They kind of did plays, made music, did things like that. And in order to kind of spend time with them, I had to kind of work out what I could do. I wasn't very artistic. I wasn't very good at acting. I can't play a musical instrument. I'm no good at painting, any of those things. One of the things I began to realize that I was actually quite good at was organizing things. So organizing the concerts, organizing the plays, organizing the events. And so I started doing that while I was at school, and then when I went to university, I carried on doing that, doing the organizing, what might now be called producing. It wasn't called producing in those days. It's when you bring everyone together, you raise the money, you work out how to sell the tickets, you work out how to promote, you do the contracts with everyone, you make all of those arrangements. That was the thing I did. That was the thing I liked doing, and I realized I was okay at it. So my first job, I worked in a youth theatre in Oxford, and started organizing not just youth theatre plays, but visiting theatre companies. I then went to run an education program in London at the Battersea Arts Centre, so organising education programs, workshops, residencies for artists. I then helped set up my own theatre company, and we made both theatre productions that we toured around England, but also we made some films as well for the television. And from there, I then went to run a big theatre in London, the Lyric Hammersmith. Those of you who know London theatres, it's quite a big theatre in West London. I started running that theatre, and then I was invited to help set up a new festival in Manchester called the Manchester International Festival. And then one day, someone said to me, "There's this job at the Arts Council. Would you be interested in applying for it?" So that's the journey. It was quite a big change to go from organizing things and working directly in the arts and working with artists and working with the public, to suddenly having to think about, how do you spend the money? How do you get the most benefit for the public from the public's money, whether it be taxes or lottery tickets? So that's the journey.
Thank you for kind of guiding us through that one. It's really kind of interesting to hear about how a career can take you from, you know, what you think it might be when you're younger to where you end up. And it's really kind of nice to see the connections and the jumps of where you go to and how things link.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think is important that, you know, a lot of people think a career in the arts is only for people who are artistically talented. It's not true. It's you know, the arts has lots of different, a career in the arts has lots of different aspects to it. You know, as I said, the producing thing of how you put a show on, understanding how you sell tickets, how you do a contract, how you raise the money, how you organize the budgets, all of those are skills that are really essential for a successful arts organization or a special a good arts project. And if you're interested in that aspect of things and aren't necessarily that talented directly as a singer or an actor or a painter then there's a really interesting, exciting career for you in the arts.
Yeah, great. So our next question is thinking about, so say we do leave college and, we're thinking about an artist career, why is it so important that artists and creatives are able to access funding through the Art Council for their projects?
Well, we've got a vision at the Arts Council of wanting to make sure that everyone in this country has an opportunity to develop their creativity, and that everyone in this country has an opportunity to access high quality cultural experiences. So all of our communities all over the country we want them to have those opportunities. And in order to do that, we need to invest in creative and cultural organizations, in artists, to be able to take what they do into communities around this country. We think, and the reason we have that vision is because we know from all the evidence that we have that if you're engaged in the arts, either as someone who makes it, not necessarily in a professional capacity, someone who does creative activity in their free time, or someone who likes to attend a museum or a concert or a play or go to an exhibition, all of those things we know can make your life better, more enjoyable, happier, give you a kind of greater sense of belonging. But also they will often develop skills and talent and experience that you can use in other aspects of your life in your careers. That's for us the importance of investing in creativity and culture and investing in artists. We want this country to be a happier, more successful, more enjoyable place to live, and we think publicly funded creativity and culture is an essential part of that.
Yeah, definitely. I know there's many artists out there that rely on that funding for them to be able to do projects and things. So it's
It's
really
also,
great.
yeah, it's also, Charlie, one of the things that we're really really good at. Often when I travel around the world quite a lot, and when you ask people what they know about this country, the things they will often refer to are the things that William Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, Adele, they are. What's our reputation? We have a fantastic reputation for being kind of creative world leaders, and it's our job at the Arts Council to make sure we keep up that reputation.
I have never thought about it that way before, but I love that. So our next question is thinking about kind of art in education. And I know particularly when I was at school, if you did music or art or drama, it was always seen as like a bit of a DOS subject, like super easy. Um, you know, why is that not the case? Why is studying a GCSE art drama, whatever creative subject, and going on to do it in college and further than that, why is it not an easy subject? And why do we need to get rid of this idea that it's just for those people that want to doss about?
Yeah, I mean, I've never understood this theory about that studying the arts is somehow easier. As I said at the beginning, I'm not artistic. I actually didn't study art subjects at school, but I had children who did GCSE art and GCSE music, and I tried to help them with that as any parent will often do, and I was astonished by how hard they were to do, how technically hard, the amount of information, the amount of skill, the amount of hard work that's required to get good grades in those subjects. I, I I just don't understand why they've got this reputation for being somehow how easy. I wonder if that's because at the heart there's a question of judgment about the quality of someone's playing, someone's art, someone's acting, which is sometimes that quality is hard to measure in the way you can measure in maths and science. But it doesn't make it easy, doesn't make it, as you say, a DOS subject. You just can't necessarily put the same sort of scores to everything in the arts as you can in more science-based subjects. So I think they're very, very, very important subjects to study, both in their own right, but also because I think they're a critical part of how we develop problem-solving skills, which is actually the sorts of skills we need as a society. And I'll perhaps get to talk a little bit about that some more. That idea of why develop creativity at school through the arts is something that I think is kind of a very, very important part of the kind of skills we're going to need to be successful in the future. And perhaps we'll talk a little bit about that later on.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree, and do hope we come back to this, the concept, 'cause I do think looking at those skills is really kind of important. And we've had some questions sent in that have asked questions around that as well. So we definitely will come back to that concept. But yeah, I totally agree. And I love that kind of, it's difficult to measure almost compared to those subjects. I think that's a really good way to think about it. So to all those students watching, if someone says, oh, you only take it because it's an easy subject, know that it can be even harder because, you know, it's subject to opinion. And what would we do without art? You know, everything is, all the movies you watch and the music you listen to, all of the things we do for our fun time involve those creative subjects. And if we were to take them away, I think life would get very boring very quickly. So yeah, our next question then is, you know, some people, and particularly when you think about education, there's kind of a feeling that's going around that arts are being cut from schools in favour for other more kind of studious, more kind of mainstream subjects like the sciences and things like that. And some schools really struggle to be able to fund their kind of arts departments because it's not a viable career option. What do you think of that statement and that sort of ideas that schools are getting less funding for those artistic subjects because they're seen as not viable career options?
Well, I think there are two or three ways of thinking about this, Charlie. I mean, the first to say is that the wider creative industries, so you know what we might mean by television, movies, advertising, fashion, it's a huge, huge part of the British economy, worth more than £90 billion a year, and it's one of the fastest growing parts of the UK economy. And we're, as I said earlier, we're particularly good at it. So the idea that studying the arts doesn't lead to career opportunities in those wider creative industries to me doesn't make any sense. We're very, very good at it, and it's a big industry, and there are incredible opportunities. So that's one thing to say. But the other thing to say, which is the thing I was beginning to touch on, Charlie, in my earlier answer, is that when you think about the challenges and the way the world is going to change, in my view, and you think about particularly the rise of artificial intelligence, and I think artificial intelligence is going to be able to, you know, to do things that I think it'll be particularly powerful at doing things that are tedious process-based things that we often use people to do now. I mean, it'll be able to kind of do repetitive tasks particularly well. What it can't do is problem solve. And to be able to problem solve, you need to be creative. You need to think of new solutions, of innovation, of trying to do things in a different way. and in my view, one of the most effective ways of developing that creativity, that problem solving, that ability to bring new ideas to problems is to study the arts. Is because that the heart of that it is about trying to bring different ideas together to come up with a new idea. That, innovation, creativity, and they are the skills and the aptitudes that as a society we're really going to need in the future, and I think are in effect safe from AI, from artificial intelligence. I don't think artificial intelligence will ever be able to be creative in that sense and come up with new solutions. AI, artificial intelligence, will be very good at, as I said, at kind of doing repetitive tasks very, very fast and very, very effectively. So when you think about what we're going to need as a society, we're going to need people who are in the future, over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, people who are really good at problem solving and coming up with creative solutions. And that's why I think it's absolutely essential that the arts are at the heart of the modern curriculum, alongside maths and English and all those subjects. I think it's absolutely essential. But as I said at the beginning of this, there's also a fantastic career in the creative industries, in those wider industries that are wide ranging in their skills needs. Not just are you good at writing, or good at acting, or good at the visual arts, or good at composing. We need people who are good with numbers, or who are good at marketing, are good at organizing, or all of those things. And there are fantastic careers available. So, as I said, I don't understand the argument that says somehow if that studying the arts isn't important because they don't lead to a career. I think they do lead to careers, but I also think they equip people with skills that are going to be essential for the future.
Definitely, I agree. The arts has so many transferable skills that I think you don't learn if you don't study them, because it's one of the only ways you can get them really during an education setting. That's for sure. Our next question is kind of thinking about technology, and perhaps even touching on the AI you were talking about. How is technology affecting art? However you'd like to interpret that, looking at the negative or the positive side of things, what sort of effects is it having?
It's having a profound effect, and I think, one of the obvious things to say is that during COVID, when we couldn't go out, when we couldn't go to concert halls, when we couldn't go to exhibitions, when we couldn't go to art centres, etc. A lot of the organisations that we worked with, and wider, you saw this huge explosion in streaming, in kind of content being available online, and some of that was through platforms like Netflix or Prime or Disney Plus, but also there were lots of arts organisations who moved a lot of their content online and reach new audiences in that way. And I think that's a change that was driven by COVID, by the pandemic, but will stay. And so I think we'll be able to access the arts in new ways. But at the same time, I think one of the characteristics of many of the arts that I work in, the theatre shows, the concerts, the exhibitions, they're fundamentally about live experiences, about being in the same room with people at the same time, having a shared experience. And that's, I think one of the things that we've been struck by is how quickly people have wanted to return to that live experience after the pandemic. And so I think one of the other interesting aspects is how is technology going to be changing the live experience for people. And I think when I go to a live performance, I mean, there are two or three things that I went yesterday to see some a David Hockney show, the painter David Hockney, but it wasn't his paintings. We sat in a white box, and they showed how his paintings were put together with a narration by him, and it was a really interesting kind of look at his work, but look at how he put the paintings together, how he often used technology. He paints a lot of his stuff on iPads these days, to create it, and because you were literally surrounded by it. It was what they call an immersive exhibition. It was really fantastic. You really felt like you were in the paintings, but you were in a room with other people sharing that experience, and that seemed to be one of its strengths, is that we were all together in the room. So I think it's changing all aspects of it. I mean, I obviously it has some. There are aspects of new technology that are worrying, that are a threat, and that I think that would be particularly true of some uses of artificial intelligence. We're beginning to see artists' work being, and be they composers or be they painters, some of their work being taken off the web and being fed into these machines and reduced as if it's new work, but actually it's essentially stealing work that belongs to artists, but it's not been recognized as such, because they've made changes to the work along the way, slight tweaks and things. So that's a bit of a worry. Is it going to threaten artists' livelihoods? Some of you may be aware that there's a big strike going on amongst writers in the States at the moment, and that's to do with how those new streaming models like Netflix, like Amazon Prime, like Disney Plus have changed the whole way in which writers in particular make a living, and the amount of money that is available for them. So I wouldn't want to pretend that there's just upsides of new technologies. There are also downsides, but they're not going to go away. They're going to change our experiences of the arts for sure, and they're going to both offer opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you talk about both sides and, the kind of unknown of what will happen in the future. And I definitely think, talking about the writers' strike, coming out of the end of that, it's going to be interesting to see what changes, these big companies put in place and what solutions they come up with to help deal with all the changes that's been brought on. So yeah, really interesting, and also a little bit scary almost, of the unknown. But I guess that's the part of being human, isn't it? To be a little bit worried and intrigued about what could happen in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't think we should be scared of it, but I think we should be alive to it. We should have our eyes open, understand the pluses and minuses of what's happening, but always feel that we can influence it and change it, and that if we work together, we can use this new technologies for the better.
Wonderful. And for the last question, that's a part of our formal interview. After this, we'll move on to our student Q&A. So to those listening, we do encourage you to keep submitting questions and ask anything that you would like to, as we move on to the next section. But for our final formal question, we have, what do you wish you had learnt a little bit earlier in life?
It's a good question and a tricky one. I think the thing that I'm very interested in, I'm a senior leader in the arts, and I'm very interested in patterns of leadership and structures of leadership. And I think when I started in the arts, I had this idea that kind of somehow good leadership was about a kind of what you might call a kind of individual, charismatic, kind of inspirational person who kind of led from the front, had a team of people who followed their instruction to the letter, and actually I've begun to realize that good leadership now is much more about how you build a team of people and you work together. And this is particularly true in the arts, that a lot of work. I was talking earlier about careers in the arts. and about the different range of skills you need to bring all of those skills together in a team that really works well, and it's the way you draw on everyone's skills and aptitudes and experiences, in a way that is really a kind of more than the sum of the parts, as we say. How do you get everyone to fulfill their potential within a team? That's what good leadership looks like now, I've begun to realize, instead of that sort of I'm out in front and hopefully everyone's going to follow, and you do what I say. You now, I think the good leaders now are the people who recognize the skills they've got in the people around them and try and bring those skills and experiences and stories to the front.
I think that's a really nice piece of advice, or something to think about as we end that session and move on to our student questions. So we have had lots of questions that have come in as schools signed up. So we'll go through some of these and any questions that come in as well through other formats. And we'll start off with this question, and I think it's really interesting. So it comes from Willingdon Community School, and they have asked, why does EBAC not include music and arts? And for those students that might not be aware what EBAC is, if you could also explain that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on EBAC, but my understanding is it's in effect the national curriculum. It's the different subjects that get kind of taken into account when students think about going on to higher education. The question is, why aren't they in the EBAC? And that's a good question. I'm personally. I mean, I know there are reasons given. You have to have a limit on the number of subjects, but as I said earlier, I do think the skills we're going to need for the future are around creativity and the importance of being able to problem solve and bring new solutions to historic problems. And I do think the arts can play a really important role in inspiring and driving creativity and giving people with those creative problem solving skills. So it's something we have regular conversations with the government about. How do we bring up the status of the arts in the school curriculum so that they are properly recognized? Interestingly, I was listening to the radio this morning, and the mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, was talking about the skills that they need in Manchester going forward, and talking about wanting to introduce an MBAC, a Manchester Baccalaureate. And he was talking about the importance, obviously, both of English and maths, but also of computer skills, digital skills, but also of creativity. He said this thing that they think the industries that are going to flourish in Greater Manchester over the next few years are going to need people with those creative problem-solving skills that I've been talking about. So I think there's a sort of growing recognition that this is going to have to be looked at if we're going to have a workforce for the future that's fit for purpose, and also a workforce that can drive the creative industries, which it's certainly in Manchester. I worked for quite a long time in Manchester, a very, very important part of the economy there. We're going to need people who've got the skills to go into that.
Yeah, I think that's always something that's come in mind as well, is that different areas of the UK will have different needs.
Yep.
And I think it's a really interesting point that Andy Burnham was thinking of what does one area need, that the general is not it's not enough for this particular area, that we follow that, and there might be another need to fill those creative industries. Definitely something for young people to think about if they want to go into these kind of artistic careers, whatever industry that may be, is where is their need for that, and where might they be thinking of possibly moving to or studying at university that's going to kind of fulfill that. Thinking of kind of going to university, And I think this one's really nice for you because you said, you know, you didn't study kind of the arts in particular, and you kind of almost went into it through different pathways. A question's come in from the Norton Catchpole School, and they have asked, is an art A-level considered a valuable qualification when getting into a university, even when you might not be studying like a non-creative degree? So you're not studying a creative degree, you might be going into maybe a science degree or another form of degree. They want to know if it's still worth them studying that art degree as an A-level, and whether that will have a value for the universities.
I've got to be careful here because I think it varies from university to university. I mean, I think a number of our universities recognise the value of art subjects at GCSE and at A level, regardless of what you're studying. I know my daughter, for instance, studied art A level and went on to study biology at Glasgow University, and it was, they commented to her that they were very interested in her because she had a wider range of experience. But I've got to be careful here because this is often about what individual universities are interested in for individual courses, and I'm not I'm not a qualified careers advisor or can tell you in detail about the admissions systems for different universities. But as I said, I know a number of examples of universities who do really value art subjects regardless of what you end up studying at university, because they recognize that often students with good art subjects do bring those creative problem solving skills into other things that they're studying.
Yes, certainly a difficult question there because there are so many different universities in the UK and they all have
Yes.
different
Yeah.
wants and needs.
Yeah.
But there will be some out there, as you say, that will take an interest in that sort of different pathway almost, or different subjects. So our next question comes from Loughton Church of England High School, and they have asked, what skills do you feel are the top 3 for working in the creative industry? And can you give some examples of these soft skills?
Well, I mean, I talked a little bit already about the range of skills that you need in the creative industries beyond the direct creative skills to do with writing or composing or playing music or acting or etc. So we need those skills, just to be absolutely clear. I'm not saying the creative industries don't need those people with good a good direct art skills, but as I said, there are sets of other skills around them that are essential to build successful industries in the creative industries, and therefore build a successful career. I've already talked about what I call being a producer, so that idea of how you're good at building teams of people, and particularly quite a lot of that is about the good producers I've worked with are people who are very good at presenting their ideas to other people, often to people who they're trying to seek investment from, money from. So there are an ability to communicate clearly, in an exciting way, to get people engaged. That's a key attribute to working in the creative industries, because in the end, a lot of the creative industries are about different forms of storytelling, about trying to excite people about a story you've got in mind, and that story could be told through music or through fashion, or it's not literally a story, but that ability to communicate an idea or a story. So communication skills are really up there within that kind of producing thing. I think you have got to be good with money, in the sense that not obviously there's an accountants who are good, who are technically very good with money, but good with money in the sense of being able to kind of think about the overall shape and need of a project, and what types of resourcing, money and people you're going to need to deliver it, and thinking about how you might go out and find that investment is important. And so, and then, as I said, the last aspect of it is, you know, I do think that one of the things that that for the future of the creative industries is being able to make sure that this, all of our skills and stories and experiences are represented. And that's not just to do with fairness. That's actually to do with how do we, you know, we constantly need new stories, and we need stories that come from all of our communities. So that ability to kind of bring forward and work with people who've got really interesting stories to tell, and recognizing that we're always going to need, you know, don't always try and, I think, don't think that you've just got to tell one story, that there's a particular story that the public are interested in. My sense is, and the evidence we've got around this is that we're going to need that anyone, whatever their background, wherever they're from, does have a compelling story to tell. And the question is, how do we, you know, we often say talent, you know, talent is everywhere, but opportunity is limited, and we've all got a job to do in kind of unlocking that talent by giving people more opportunities. And I do think that's a skill you can acquire, that you don't just always try to work with the same people telling the same stories, that you try and draw on everyone's stories when thinking about how you kind of build a project.
Right, definitely glad we asked that question, because I think that was a really nice one and really important. We have time for just one or two more questions before we have to unfortunately end today's session. So our next question is going to be from Ashton Manor Academy, and they've asked quite an interesting one, which is, what is the connection or relationship between art and sustainability?
A good question. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the big stories, big issues that we're talking quite a lot about at the Arts Council at the moment, is how do we create an arts sector, a cultural sector, create the wider creative industries that are environmentally responsible, because you know, that's an essential part of you know, if we're going to have society into the future, we've got to address this kind of the major problem of the climate crisis, and we have to recognize that a lot of the things that we have taken for granted, everyone driving to a festival, and kind of creating mountains and mountains of waste, it simply isn't sustainable. And so we've been spending quite a lot of time trying to encourage some quite significant changes in behavior. So, and you will see it increasingly at festivals, for instance, of kind of, how do you make sure that there's a kind of really thorough kind of recycling program, so the public, you know, so the public have minimal impact on site. How do we think harder about encouraging people to get to events not in private cars, but in public transport? How do we make sure that when we're running generators that power the lights and the sound and everything, that we're doing that in a sustainable way, not using carbon heavy fuels? How do we make sure that artists themselves are thinking about how, when they travel around, what are the opportunities to reduce their carbon footprint by driving their trucks, you know, by having electric trucks, for instance, to move their sound equipment around? So, you know, there are all sorts of aspects of it that are now very, very kind of at the center and the heart of the planning of events. And actually, it's interesting. It's another one of those skills that we're beginning to realize has a real premium. People who understand the world of environmental sustainability and have got the creative solutions to that are really valuable now within the sector. That people with that experience, that know-how, and that's a really transferable skill. You can move it around lots of different types of events, and it's a skill that I wouldn't have thought when I started on my career was never talked about, but now it's a central part of planning. Who is thinking about the environmental impact of the project you're planning, and how do we manage and reduce that impact? And that's a responsibility for all of us. There are people with particular skills often employed just to think about that.
Yeah, really interesting that you mentioned that. We did interview a lovely lady last year who had started it and ended up just naturally through her passion for environment working. I think she worked on a project for like Netflix, and her title was like environmental something or other, and her whole job was to figure out how she could make the set more environmental. How did they recycle the plastic, and thinking about the disposable cutlery from the food that was brought on for the staff for the sessions and all things like that. And she said that she absolutely loved it and never thought that her other skills could be given to her and make this sort of role. So yeah, definitely. And it's really great to hear that that's becoming almost like a standard, that this kind of need is growing.
It is, and we are increasingly tying our funding to it. When an organization comes to us and says they want money from us, one of the questions we ask them is, so tell us about your environmental plans. How are you going to keep your carbon footprint as low as possible? And obviously, one of the other aspects of the arts is it's an incredible platform for people to talk about that. So you can have work which is about the environment, as well as work that is environmentally responsible in the way it's made.
Yes, certainly. Really, really, really important things. So quickly, for our final question then, we've had this question come in from several different schools, and it's all kind of thinking about the same question. So I'm going to reword all of them into one. So where can students go to find career opportunities in the creative industry? Do you have any kind of suggestions of different platforms or magazines or websites that young people might be able to go to kind of look at what's available in their area?
It's a really good question, and I should have an answer to it, because it's the right question to be asking, and I don't. I mean, I do think that I think the things that making contact with arts organizations, with people working with those organizations in creative industries to understand what the opportunities are in your area is a very good first start. I mean, certainly almost everyone I know who worked in the creative industry spent some time working in some type of training, apprenticeship, volunteering, often that required them to do a bit of work, sometimes with just perhaps their expenses covered, etc. So trying to understand what those opportunities are in your area, doing a bit of research is where I would suggest you start. Yeah, that's the best I can offer, I'm afraid. Sorry, that's not a thorough answer, but it's what I would do if I was in a local area going, I'm passionate about having a career in the creative industry. I would just start looking around about who's working locally, make contact with them, ask them those questions.
It is a difficult one. Britain is a big place,
Yes.
From Wales to London to all the way up at the top to Northern Ireland. It's lots of different countries, and everywhere is going to be a little bit different. So there's probably no easy other answer than research.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Look into the area that you're in. As we move towards the end of today's session, do you have any final thoughts or feelings that you'd like to leave our young people with today?
Well, only that a career in the arts and the wider creative industries are fantastic careers. Don't let anyone tell you there isn't a career in the arts or a career in the creative industries for you, especially if you go, well, I'm not particularly good at music or at singing or at acting. That doesn't matter. We need all sorts of skills, people with all sorts of kind of backgrounds and experiences coming into the creative industry. So if it's something that you think will be interesting, don't let people put you off. Pursue it and explore it, and because it's incredibly rewarding. You're doing something that you're creating new stuff to excite people and give them a good time. The thing you were talking about, Charlie, about what makes life worthwhile. It's often going out to a concert or going to an exhibition or watching something on that really excites you on TV or whatever, and you all can have an opportunity to do that, to give people that wonderful time. So do think about it, and as I said, it's a tough career, but it is really rewarding.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Simon, and talking to us about everything from sustainability in the arts to starting your career and getting out there and talking to us about your own career as well. It's been really wonderful to have you on and to hear from you. And I'm sure many young people watching will have found this very useful and encouraging if they want to take a career in the arts themselves. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for finding the time to join us today.